Hello, my name is Flora, and lately I noticed a creepy guy who's been following me. He was a tall, bald man and looked slightly hunchbacked, always appearing in a black suit. He had a cold, grimacing face and a very scary look. As time went on, it got more and more serious as I began noticing him everywhere. I told Bella about it, but she quickly reassured me, told me I shouldn't worry too much. I thought Bella was right. Maybe I was too skeptical. We left the parking lot and walked over to the elevator area. At that moment, I saw that strange man again. He got in a car and disappeared. Bella looked at me and said perhaps he lives nearby, and that's why I'm seeing him more often. But the man also looked kind of well-dressed. He seemed to look like a good guy. I didn't say anything, yet I still felt a bit suspicious. When the elevator opened, I was startled to see the man in the black suit was already inside. Bella and I were so confused. Didn't we just see him in the parking lot on his way out? Feeling scared, I pulled Bella to the opposite elevator and quickly got inside. When the elevator door closed, Bella and I breathed a sigh of relief. Then Bella told me that guy wouldn't dare do anything harmful to us in such a crowded place. However, when Bella and I stepped out of the elevator and made our way to the shopping mall, we were on the escalator and quickly stopped as we spotted the man in black again. He was on the opposite side of the escalator. I was so confused. How could he go faster than us, yet deliberately manage to be on the other side of the escalator? It appeared as if he wanted us to see him. Bella tried to calm me. She led me to the shopping mall. As I finished trying on the clothes at the store and walked outside, I couldn't find Bella. I picked up the phone and called her, but she didn't answer. I started to have a bad feeling about this. I assumed that man in black must have something to do with Bella's disappearance. While I was running around looking for Bella, from afar, I could see the man in the black suit. I quickly approached him. I had made my way to the shopping mall storage room and saw that the door was open, so I looked inside. The scene inside immediately scared me. That freakish man in the black suit was putting his hand on Bella's head. It looked like she was being coerced to stand still. In less than 5 seconds, many tentacles came out from the back of the man with the black suit, and they grabbed onto Bella's head. They let out a spine-chilling noise, and her scalp was split in two. And soon after, Bella was torn in half. But even more terrifying, from within his skin, another man who looked identical to the one I saw in the elevator came out of him. At that moment, I was so terrified that I couldn't keep my feet still. I accidentally dropped my basket, which let out a loud noise. The two men immediately reacted to it. Like a flash of light, the two men rushed toward me with their expressions that couldn't look more horrifying. My mind was totally empty. The only thing I could do was to run away from them as fast as I could. Seeing the door ahead, I quickly got inside and locked it. As I turned around, another horrible scene appeared right in front of my eyes. Now, 3 men dressed in black were killing 3 employees with their tentacles, and then they quickly duplicated again into another 3 of them. Being extremely petrified, I quickly unlocked the door and rushed outside, making my way to the elevator. Luckily, I managed to get inside in the nick of time. As it went up, I heard screams. From a corner, a man dressed in black was using his tentacles to kill all the people around him. I frighteningly pressed the buttons to open the door of the elevator when the people inside quickly turned into these creepy black-suited men. I tried my best to get out, The scene was now beyond scary. I was surrounded by those creepy black-suited men and their screams. And the victims being torn apart and being transformed was beyond terror. I gasped for air as soon as I got out of the mall. Fortunately, I made it out of this hell on earth. But right at that moment, as I looked up, 3 of those black-suited men were standing in front of me, lifting me up with their tentacles. I felt like my head was about to be smashed into pieces. I suddenly woke up on a hospital bed. In front of me was a surgeon and my close friend Bella. The doctor told me that my brain tumor was successfully removed. It was then that I realized it was just a dream. Hi, I'm happy, and just like my name, I'm always happy and optimistic. I'm currently serving in the military as a medical doctor. In 1990, I was on a business trip to Thailand to work on a project that focused on developing antidotes. The place where I worked was a small village, about 100 kilometers away from Bangkok, the capital of Thailand. The people and their way of life was very different from the way of the Western world of America. The dirt roads were full of bumps and potholes. The daily life of the community was simple, yet hard-working, and their homes were constructed from wood and other natural materials that complemented the beautiful environment. I was warmly greeted and welcomed by the locals. The village chief was named Sunan. He quickly guided me to the village's clinic, where I was assigned to work for the foreseeable future, possibly many months or years of service. This village had surprised me in many ways. After my first week of work there, I had encountered many frightening and creepy events. After a few days of work at the clinic, a man rushed inside. I couldn't help notice the wooden cage in his cart, with a middle-aged man inside. He frantically demanded to have counsel with the village elder, Sunan, seeking advice to cure his brother. But the man in the cage looked very strange, as if he was possessed by some spirit. I could only see the white of his eyes. He contorted his body and stuck his tongue in and out like a snake. Since the man was afraid that his brother might attack others, he and his family had to keep him locked in the cage. After seeing the man's symptom, Sunan quickly figured out the problem and asked if the man's family knew anything that might have caused the spirits of the snake gods to be angry. The family was worried that the secret they were trying to conceal from the village would be discovered. They had to confront it and reveal the whole truth. No matter what the consequence might be, they had to find a cure. The day before, while some workers were demolishing a deserted house, they discovered a snake nest with many eggs and a couple of snakes. It seemed as if they were taking over the home. Not only that, the man was also terrified to discover a giant king cobra slithering around the eggs and the other snakes, looking like it was the alpha leader of that den of snakes. As the fearless elder was searching for the snakes, he immediately came up with a plan that could prove to be very dangerous. Not only did that brother catch the king cobra, but he burnt all the snakes and the eggs, despite what the others were warning him not to do. That night, when he went home, he felt a fever coming on and was told to stay in bed. At the time, they thought it was just a simple cold. The next day, a little past noon, when the younger man's brother was not doing his share of the work in the fields, he became worried and went home to check up on him. His brother was still in bed, wrapped up in his blanket. The younger brother needed him in the fields, so he approached him in anger and accused him of being lazy and said he was using the cold as an excuse to get out of the work. But no matter what his brother was shouting, he just kept sleeping, as if he was in a coma or something. The younger brother yanked off the blanket and almost passed out from the shock. To see the figure of his brother curled up with a forked tongue, sticking in and out, hissing like a snake. The younger of the two brothers panicked in fear, worried that the older sibling's behavior was out of control. He attempted to attack him and was rapidly becoming a threat to everyone. He was forced to restrain his brother by locking him in that cage before he could do any more damage or seriously hurt someone. After hearing about this, the village elder, Mr. Sunan, immediately panicked and ordered him to keep his brother securely confined. He knew what had to be done, because the brother had committed an offense to the snake gods. The family must release any serpents they had, right now. The brother and all his family were in extreme danger, and his brother's offense was putting the whole community at risk. He was ordered to take immediate action before the entire village would suffer the wrath of the snake gods, saying that he must confess his sins and repent right away, that this was the only hope for a cure and a safe community. The family members didn't hesitate at all. They followed the orders that the village leader instructed them to do and immediately went home to release whatever serpents remained. They also brought offerings to the temple and asked all the villagers to hold a prayer ceremony. However, several nights later, the village head had a dream about the gods of snake, and the alpha snake god in his vision told him that the man not only destroyed the snakes' homes, he had also killed so many of them that his act of violence was so bad that he couldn't be forgiven. As the village leader said that there wouldn't be any cure for the man, I worried about his safety and decided to go to his house. When I arrived, he was locked in a cage, behaving and crawling around like a snake. I tried to give the man a proper medical examination, but failed to find any kind of medical disease. It was clear that the older brother was afflicted with some kind of unnatural possession. A few days later, I heard that the man had broken out of the cage and escaped, slithering deep into the forest. The villagers continued to search, but couldn't find any trace of him. This was a creepy story that I had personally witnessed during my first week in Thailand. I'll continue my journey and follow up on this continuing saga and report whatever I find in a later story of this mysterious land. My name is Donald. I'm the owner of a sheep farm that lies on a hill outside of town. I reside here with my wife and daughter. People think of our lives as boring, but quite to the contrary. We're very happy and content. Every day we have fresh air to breathe and take in the majestic beauty of nature and scenery surrounding us. In my opinion, what could be better than that? Our family mainly depends on this sheep farm. When the season comes, we collect the sheep's wool and bring it to town in exchange for our basic needs and necessities. Of course, I keep a bit of wool for my wife to make new clothes for our family. My wife is a wise and kind person. I love her and my child more than anything else in this whole world. But little did I know that something was waiting to happen to both my family and our sheep. Recently, for some unknown reasons, some of our sheep had gone missing. The first time we realized this, only 1 or 2 sheep went missing, so we assumed that they got lost or were eaten by predators. But the number of missing sheep increased gradually over time. Every time I lured the sheep back into the barn, I found 3 or 4 of them had disappeared. Realizing something strange might be at work here, I decided to quietly investigate what was happening to them. To my astonishment, I discovered what seemed like strange creatures sneaking into the barn, snatching our sheep one by one. Could it be wolves? Having a closer peek, I was able to make out that these creatures were moving on 2 feet, not 4, reminding me of the way that the monkeys move. I decided to secretly follow the creatures to see where they were coming from. They were carrying the sheep into the forest and then gathered around a big old nearby tree. This giant of a tree was probably the largest one in the forest. Beneath it was a small cave where the creatures would scan the area before carrying the sheep inside it. Half afraid, yet half curious, I hesitated at first to follow them. However, my curiosity eventually overcame my anxiety, and I decided to go peek inside. The hole was quite large, so I just needed to bend over slightly in order to fit. Once I passed the entrance, I saw that it opened up into quite a large cave. It smelled of dank mold, and the utter darkness frightened me beyond words. My senses were telling me to continue my detective work. If I didn't find a way to stop this, that we might lose them all. We cared for our sheep. As I continued deeper into the cave, I spotted shadows of those horrifying creatures moving about. Truly dreadful. In front of me were 2 revolting dwarf-like creatures. They were feasting on our live lambs, and they were covered in blood while gorging on the sheep and their lambs. I couldn't allow this any longer, and with a hunting rifle in my hand, I fired several shots at the creatures and killed them instantly. After making sure they were dead, I approached them. Seeing them from up close, it turned out they were a little like evil dwarfs, which was the usual center of discussion among the village elders. I always thought that these were just legends that were passed down as old folk tales. But now, I was becoming a true believer. I thought if I brought one of them to town, maybe I would be given respect of the members of the village. I gathered those 2 little devil corpses, carried them back to the farm. I was rather proud of my new hunting trophies, so I put them in a corner and went to sleep, intent on making my presentation known to the townfolk in the morning. Perhaps I could trade them in exchange for some bricks to repair the roof of my house. I didn't know that I was going to make a big mistake in my judgment. As I was resting, I woke up with fright to hear the screams of my wife and daughter. In a panic, I ran outside to the yard and saw them bound up by these small demons with their sharp claws. And then I noticed everything was covered in blood. The dead sheep were piled up, and all the vegetables for harvest were crushed and uprooted. The whole farm was being destroyed by this gang of evil little dwarfs. My child and my wife had been captured. Despite my shouting and shooting at them, those dwarves continued to run off without retaliation or reaction. They even decided to confiscate the corpses of the monsters I killed earlier. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared into the forest. I tried to give chase, but I couldn't keep up with them this time. And I knew if I braved that cave alone, I would be at a disadvantage because I was outnumbered by too many of them. As I contemplated my actions, I decided to return to my farm. The next morning, me and a group of professional hunters from town headed to the forest to find my wife and child. They were all positively and confidently thinking that these goblins would be an easy thing to deal with. But contrary to their judgment, something else occurred. Despite having been in that forest countless times before, they couldn't understand why it seemed so strange this time. The longer they walked, the more confused and lost they became. They lost their track and their trail became faded. Not to mention those clever little aliens who staggered large amounts of traps laid down in the forest. The hunters decided to split into 3 groups in order to avoid them and cover more ground quickly to find those demons. One group took one track of the demons, began hearing strange noises. As they pursued, they all staggered into a deep pit rigged with sharp stakes. None of them survived. The second group, after walking for a while, found a strange creature dancing on a tall tree branch. Suddenly, a big net sprouted out from underneath them, trapping them all inside. As the hunters became trapped, dozens of those little spooks immediately rushed out with weapons, throwing sticks and firing unknown objects toward the hunters. Soon the entire area was covered in the blood of those hunters, as the second group of hunters sadly passed away, one by one. And the third group, under my guidance, arrived safe and sound at the big old tree, the home of those little demons. Before venturing into the cave, I poured gasoline all around that big old tree. But strangely, upon entering, we found the cave empty, nothing inside. I really didn't expect to be trapped by those little dwarves. As we kept searching the cave, we eventually reached what seemed to be the end, but as it turned out, we discovered another path leading to an exit. As we began our trek out, I saw my wife and daughter being tied to a tree with their mouths covered, but as we made eye contact, they moved and shook their heads as if they were trying to warn us about something. Their expressions signaled danger. I decided to make a plan. I grabbed a big bag full of chili powder and pepper spray, and I scattered it all around them as I stormed out of the cave. Just as expected, the moment we stepped out, a dozen of those evil dwarves appeared to us, but couldn't do anything, as they were bombarded with blinding pepper spray in their eyes. Meanwhile, the hunters and I took advantage of this opportunity to untie my family and make our escape. Of course, those clever little elves didn't give up that easily and chased after us. Even though they had small bodies, they were able to move surprisingly fast and just a few meters away from catching up to us. After escaping the old tree, I tossed a match to the gasoline and instantly set fire to the whole tree. Only a few of those little genius demons made it out of the cave alive and continued to chase us. While the others were engulfed by the fire, they were extremely fierce, using bow and arrows to fire at us. Unfortunately, another hunter was hurt by one of those goblins' poisoned arrows and was left behind. At this point, only 3 of us were left, my wife, my daughter, and I. We continued running tirelessly without even stopping. Soon enough, we made it to the village where the evil dwarves were nowhere to be seen. Unfortunately for us, the horror was far from over. That night, while me and my family were sleeping, our house was set ablaze. Tragically, I was the only one who survived this ordeal, carrying awful disfiguring burns for the rest of my life. Needless to say, everyone in my village believed that the fire was caused by these evil little monsters. I burned down their shelter and destroyed their families, and so their revenge was payment in favor of leaving me with nothing to the rest of my days. A few years ago, I witnessed an atrocious incident, and I've been haunted by it ever since. I told this story many times to numerous people, but no one ever believes me. Basically, I ran into an alien. I know, it sounds incredibly stupid, but listen to this. He was invisible, and the reason why I lost all my hair. No matter what anyone says, I still believe they are real, and that they are among us. That day, me and my two best friends, Brian and Chloe, were playing video games at Chloe's house. The weather forecast indicated that there would be no rain for the next few days. I was really glad and relieved to hear that because I planned a short trip. However, that same night, around 8 p.m., lightning hit from all sides, and torrential rains began to pour down in buckets. The rainfall was so intense, we worried about Chloe's glass windows and feared they might explode under the pressure. Outside, a long bolt of lightning suddenly hit a large tree up on the hill, causing it to burst into flames immediately, despite the heavy rain. Smoke and fire illuminated the sky, and we were scared, kind of hypnotized by the formidable scene. Our curiosity was piqued, and we decided to run toward the hill to take a closer look. We knew that such rare phenomenons might attract tens of thousands of viewers on YouTube, and therefore I saw an opportunity, so I quickly grabbed my camera before storming outside. Sorry about that. Poor choice of words, I guess. Ever the cautious type that I am, I took a small fire extinguisher along with me, just in case I needed to bash some monster over the head. As we got closer to the burnt tree, we discovered that there was a large and deep hole next to it, with smoke still rising from the ashes. But a weird shape was emerging from behind the smoke. We all quietly crept closer and closer to the object of our attention when Brian suddenly exclaimed, "Guys, we just made a huge discovery. I'll bet you it's an alien spaceship." Anyway, we all ran toward the strange vehicle excitedly, and the closer we got, the more we realized this ship was extremely large. It had a very elaborate and intricate design, very futuristic, and could only be the creation of an alien civilization. Inside the ship, we found large metal trunks, furniture, and walls covered with buttons and lights. Everywhere, slimy goo dripping down the walls and off the ceiling, and it gathered in small pools on the floor. As we got deeper, we saw glass jars filled with bizarre creatures. In one corner, there was a large, transparent tube that was sucking whole trees out of the earth right outside. Were these guys collecting samples of the Earth's natural resources? We moved slowly and cautiously while looking around, but Brian suddenly screamed. When I turned around, I saw him being lifted up in the air by maybe a tractor beam or some invisible force and being thrown into the chair in the center of the spaceship. Panicked and yelling, Chloe and I tried to pull Brian from his seat when all of a sudden, all the objects inside the spaceship began to vibrate. I mean, violently, before floating in the air. They came and formed this menacing circle, like a cyclone spinning all around us. They all seemed to be controlled by some mysterious force. But when we looked around, there was still no sign of anything or anyone. We were all trembling and shivering in fear, our faces covered in sweat, and Chloe and I, well, she was so scared. There's no polite way to say that she peed in her pants. As I looked around in fear, I held that fire extinguisher tightly, and without thinking, I instinctively began spraying those floating objects, kind of like dust or orbs, circling around us. Even though I knew it wouldn't really do anything, I still felt safer trying something as opposed to nothing at all. All those objects were soon wet and still floating about, but a strange thing happened and appeared right in front of my eyes. I should say right in front of our eyes. The foam bubbles from the fire extinguisher unintentionally covered the surroundings of those human-like creatures and revealed their silhouettes. However, they were much taller than the average human beings. There were tentacles that came out of this creature and began coiling and squeezing around us to the point of sudden respiratory failure. I had accepted my death when suddenly a very powerful light hit me. As I began floating, I was levitating into thin air. I must have been unconscious after that. When I woke up, all three of us were lying under the burnt tree. Our hair had been cut off, and the deep hole, as well as the spaceship, had completely disappeared without a trace. I quickly woke my two friends up, asking them what happened. But both of them looked at me blankly, like a deer in the headlights. They didn't understand what I was saying or what I was referring to. They didn't remember anything at all. It was as if their memories were completely erased. To this day, I still cannot understand why I'm the only one who can remember anything. Am I the one chosen one? Somehow did the aliens want me in particular to know about their existence? You may think I'm a bit crazy, but I do believe that aliens are truly among us, and not just one, but a few, maybe many. Maybe they're invisible, or maybe they look just like us while they prepare to take over planet Earth. There are frequencies beyond our human senses that remain unseen and unheard. The next time you see a dark shadow moving past your peripheral vision, beware.
You may be experiencing a dark invader.
Just a few days before Halloween, two 10-year-old boys learned that a circus was coming to town, featuring clowns. The boys rushed off to the mall to buy their clown costumes. But after the night of the show, one of the boys went missing, never to be seen again. Our story took place about 10 years ago, when I was just a 10-year-old kid. At that time, my friends and I were really into clowns and their performances. As Halloween was approaching, my friends and I went to the mall to buy costumes. I didn't hesitate to get myself a clown costume, since I was a big fan of clowns. It was only one day before Halloween when the circus performance was due to take place. I couldn't wait until that Halloween night to try on my new costume. On Halloween night, my mother and I went to the circus. I was especially excited to see the clown performance. There were many people in attendance, and the circus soon became overcrowded and bustling. I tried to get to the front of the line so I could get a better view. Suddenly, I noticed the clown waving at me from the side of the stage, beckoning me to come closer. At first, I was a little confused, curious, and surprised, but I followed the clown anyway. When I looked at him, he led me to a less crowded spot backstage. Suddenly, the clown disappeared right in front of me. To my surprise, I was looking all around to see where he was. Then he suddenly reappeared behind my back and hit me on the shoulders. Startled, I turned around and saw him swinging around in front of me, moving his arms and legs as if he was performing just for me. He then gave me a small balloon. Noticing how amused I was, the clown put his hands up to cover his eyes, then silently lowered his head. I didn't understand what was happening, but just then he suddenly jumped up. His eyes were bulging out as if they were about to pop out of his face. Without stopping, the clown stretched his arms out and started to pull me by my hands. I was so dreadfully worried that my whole body froze, and I couldn't utter a single word. The clown didn't say anything. He just curled up and morphed into a piece of soft candy-like thing. He stretched out his whole body like a snake and then wrapped himself around me. He covered his face and then gave me a wide, wicked smile while baring his protruding sharp teeth. I became hysterically emotional as I began forcing my way back to the circus stage. But it was so crowded. I was trembling nervously, holding my mom's legs. As I looked around to see where he was, I was overwhelmed with dread. I tried persuading my mom to take me home, but she told me to relax, enjoy the show. It was about to begin, so let's get comfortable and enjoy it. Needless to say, I wasn't in the mood to look to see any more of the show, so I sat nervously while the lights lit up the stage and the show began. People were cheering with excitement. I nervously snuck around the side of the stage to see if that evil clown would reappear. Then, as I looked up, I caught the eye of another clown staring at me from the stage. His eyes looked just like the other one before. He commenced to put on a performance, a silent demonstration showing his emotions and characters, screaming, panicking, bright smiles, acting happy, and yet frightening at the same time. He showed us all types of facial expressions, and he performed just like a real person. As I was too frightened, I told my mom that clown was a ghost, not a human being. But my mother completely ignored me, and she told me to stay quiet and enjoy the performance. But I was in fear. I was so afraid of that clown that I broke into a sweat. At that time, all I wanted to know was, is this real or fake? With all my strength, I decided to approach the stage. As everyone focused their eyes on me, I tried my best not to reveal my fear. Somehow, I needed to convince everyone that clown was a ghost. I kept reassuring myself, saying over and over in my mind that I'm not afraid, I'm not afraid. I got up and ran over to the stage to confront that clown. I shouted out loud to the crowds and said, "Everyone, I know this may come as a surprise, but this clown is not human. He's a demon, and he will devour and kill us. Everyone, please run." But the crowd was unaffected. No one would believe a child like me. The show just kept on going. Seeing that no one was responding, I ran up to the clown. I grabbed him, pulled off his nose, and tried ripping the hair from his head to prove to everyone that he was not a real person. But this was no joke. The audience responded with laughter. I made a fool of myself as the spectators roared with laughter. under all that makeup, he surprisingly looked at me in wonder and asked, "What are you trying to do, young man?" And he laughed as he walked away. I was so embarrassed, feeling awkward and disappointed by my ridiculous actions. I apologized to the clown with a few humbling words of sorrow as I left the stage. Everyone was angry, confused, puzzled. Their eyes were all glazing at me with anger because I interrupted the whole performance. I felt so bad that I began to cry. My mom hugged me and comforted me, but I couldn't tell her the truth because I knew that she probably wouldn't believe me. That night after the show, when the lights on the stage had been turned off and everyone had gone home, I wanted to go into the toilet, so my mom waited for me at the gate outside. When I came out, suddenly all the spotlights lit up, and out of nowhere, clowns appeared. They started dancing and performing scary pantomimes. They turned their feet into bridges and walked on them. Their long arms turned into ropes, swinging back and forth. And I could see those wide, creepy smiles on their faces. Then a clown with extremely long legs walked toward me. He approached me, showing all his white teeth on his dark face while laughing disgustingly. I tried to escape as fast as I could, calling for help, but the harder I ran, the slower I got. The clown walked step by step with his frightfully long legs, stepping in front of me, and then turned around looking at me, covering his face with his hands as if to tease me. He rubbed his eyes like a crying kid and then stuck his tongue out. I fell backwards in panic. My eyes closed tightly as I did not dare to look at him. Then suddenly, I woke up in the middle of the night with sweat dripping all over me. I told my mom everything that I witnessed at the circus, but she didn't believe me. Realizing that there was no way for me to make her believe my story, I locked myself in my room for the whole day. By late afternoon on Halloween, my friend Westy came to my house looking for me. He looked frightened and was about to tell me a horrifying story. A child went missing last night. It was Hank, my friend. He went to see the pantomime show and disappeared shortly after that. No one knew how he went missing, but when I heard the news, I was shocked and wondered if Hank had been taken away by that clown. I suddenly thought about those sentences that my mom often threatened me with when I was naughty. She would say, "Remember, clowns take naughty children to perform their plays for them." I didn't believe that that was true, but it made obvious connections with me. I told Mom about Hank's disappearance and pointed out that it had something to do with those clowns. But she said, "Son, that's just something we parents use to discipline naughty children. Ghost clowns do not exist, and I don't want to discuss this any longer." I was so disappointed with my mom and my neighbors. They all assured me that Hank was kidnapped by someone, and no one believed my story. The next day, as we were driving by town, I saw a big clown holding a small clown's hand walking nearby. The small clown looked at me. His eyes were glazed, lifeless. His facial expressions were drooping with hopelessness. I'd never seen that little clown before, until I found out that Hank was missing. I had no idea what happened to Hank. He was a good kid just like me. Or perhaps there was something suspicious he was trying to hide that I didn't know about. And until today, that little clown remained small, with nothing changing. I know there are actual ghosts and demons out there. They exist all around us, but no one notices because they're mysteriously silent. 10 years have passed now, and Hank has never been seen again. Needless to say, I've never been to another clown performance since then. Until now, I still don't know how I managed to escape those freaky, creepy clowns.